Welcome, Grade 10 Life Science learners. My name is Ilse, and we are going to look at the biosphere today. Now, when you look at this picture on the screen, you will notice that it represents the whole of the planet Earth. Now, we're first going to look at the biospheres, and then from here we're going to move on to the smaller ecosystems. So let's start by looking at the key concepts that is concerned with this biosphere. Now, first of all, you need to know that the biosphere, and then we're going on to the biomes of South Africa. Then we're going to move on to the terrestrial and aquatic biomes of Southern Africa. From there on, we're going to look at the climate, we're going to look at the soil, the vegetation, which are the plants, and from there we're going to move on to location of the different biomes in our country, South Africa. So we're going to break each of these concepts down into more detail. Right, let's start and go on to the next one. Now, the concepts of the biomes and the concepts of that includes the whole planet Earth is the following four spheres. Now, this first sphere is the lithosphere. Now, it's quite difficult to remember that word lithosphere. And a good way to remember that, if you look at the L. Now, L stands for land. I would say if you combine those two L's, it's easier to remember. So land, which includes soil. All right, from there on, we're going to move on to the hydrosphere. Now, hydros means water. Now, a good way to remember hydrosphere is if we look at H2O, which is water. So we're going to put that H and that H, and that is how you're going to remember hydrosphere, water. The next one is atmosphere, and guess what? Look at the A for air. So the atmosphere is the air that surrounds our planet Earth, and that is what you inhale every single day to stay alive. Now, all of this is known as our biosphere. Now, look at the word bio. Biology comes from the word life. And life includes all our plants, all our animals, all our microorganisms in the soil, in the water, in the air, everywhere where you find life is known as the biosphere. Let's move on to now, we're going to look at every one of these concepts in a bit more detail. Now, remember, we said the biosphere includes the outer region of the Earth, which is the lithosphere. How do we remember lithosphere? L for land, so it's all the soil and all the land. Then the lower region of the atmosphere, and that is like the troposphere. I'll show you a diagram later on of the troposphere. That is the lowest surface of the atmosphere. Then it includes the hydrosphere, which is the water. So these three aspects, lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, make up the big biosphere. Now, all of these, the lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, forms a dynamic interaction. So there's a dynamic interaction between two regions. Now, maybe these two words you can remember, the word biotic. What does that mean? It means living. So the word biotic refers to all the living organisms on Earth. Think about plants, all our animals, all our tiny little microorganisms that live in the soil. Those are all living or biotic organisms. Now, those organisms forms a interaction with the abiotic. Now, abiotic, if you look at that little letter A, that means non-living. So always when you add a little a in front of the word, it means non. Now, the abiotic regions of the Earth is then your soil, air, and water. So there's an interaction of living and non-living components. Now, all these interactions is illustrated in this diagram. There's an exchange, like we said, of energy, of water, of gases, of nutrients. All of these substances are exchanged in these regions and forms a big interaction. None of these components can survive without the other components. So what I'm trying to say to you is that the living components cannot survive without the non-living environment. All right, let's move on. Now, talking about living organisms, that's where the term biodiversity comes from. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about biodiversity today, but just very briefly, bio means living. Remember the word bio? Diversity comes from a variety. So if we look at all these diagrams, we have a variety of plants, a variety of animals, and all these organisms need the abiotic environment to survive. They need the soil, they need the water, they need the air. So they need the entire biosphere to be alive. Right, let's move on. Now we're going to look at the lithosphere in a bit more detail. Now maybe those of you who do geography will understand this a bit more than just the people who are doing life science. But very briefly, what is the lithosphere? Lithosphere refers to the solid, rocky crust that covers the entire Earth. So there we have the word crust, and that forms, it's about 100 kilometers in thickness. Now just under that crust we have a mantle. Now the difference between the crust and the mantle just lies in the chemical composition of these two layers. But the crust is the important part. All right. Now that crust part is where we have earthquakes. All right. Now the fast earthquake waves show that the top of the mantle is rigid, just like the crust, although, like I said, it's a bit different. Now the lithosphere means a ball of stone. So it's like solid stone, solid rock. Now this stone is made up of various tectonic plates, around about 20 of these plates. Now I'm sure you've heard of earthquakes, you've heard of tsunamis. Now these tectonic plates are in constant movement with each other, but more about that in your geography lesson. Right, we're now moving on to the hydrosphere. Now hydrosphere, remember, hydrosphere H4H2O, which is water. So the hydrosphere is liquid water component of our Earth. Now if you can see in this picture, which represents a river, but that's not the only place where we find water. We find water on 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered with water. That means it's about 70% of our surface Earth is covered by water. Now, if you just think about the human body, our human body mostly consists of water. About 82% of your blood is water, about 70% of your brain is water. So water is a very important component inside of your body, just as water is important in the biosphere. All right, so like I said now, the human body is mostly water. Now you're going to learn more about this when you do the human body. Now, if we look at this life cycle of water life cycle, we're going to do more detail about the life cycle in the next session. But as you can see in this picture, that water forms a cycle. So the water evaporates from Earth, it forms clouds when it condenses, and it moves back onto the Earth when it rains, and it runs off on the surface and goes back into the atmosphere again. So there's a constant movement of water. Now without this cycle of water, no life on Earth can exist. All right, that brings us now to the atmosphere. Now let's go for blue. For atmosphere, can't see any blue, we'll have to go with black. No, that's not a very good idea. Right, let's go for orange. Right, atmosphere, as we know now, is air, Right, so it's the air, the layer of air that is around the earth. That is the air that you and I breathe so that we can be alive. So it's a body of air, as I said now, it's a body of air which surrounds our planet. Most of our atmosphere is located close to the Earth's surface where it's most dense. So close to the surface, the air is more dense, and that is the air that we inhale every day. Now that air is composed of plus minus 79% nitrogen. Now nitrogen is a gas that you and I cannot inhale and use, but we are very dependent on that nitrogen. Now in the next session we are going to look at the nitrogen cycle and the importance of nitrogen for you and for plants and for animals. Just under 21% of that air consists of oxygen. That's the gas that you and I can breathe and can use in our cells for cellular respiration. The small amount of air that remains consists of gases like carbon dioxide and other gases like methane, etc. Now, our atmosphere is divided into 3 different layers. Now, once again, you're going to do this in the geography lesson in more detail, but just a quick summary of the different layers. Close to Earth, as you can see, there's the surface of the Earth. About 14 kilometers above that is a troposphere. Then we get the stratosphere and the mesosphere and the ionosphere. But very important layer for us is this ozone layer. Now, I'm sure you heard a lot about the ozone layer. What is the ozone layer? In a very brief sentence, it is a variety of oxygen that you and I need. Now, what happens here is the whole greenhouse effect is that ozone layer blocks all the polluted air gets blocked in this layer of atmosphere, and what happens then is that it forms like a blanket of carbon dioxide around the Earth, and that is known as the greenhouse effect. And that will affect our ozone layer and obviously our breathing in of oxygen. But we're going to leave this for the next session. All right, this brings us to a break. We're going to have a quick break. Please don't go away. I'll be back straight after this break. Thank you. Right, welcome back, grade 10 learners. I hope you had a quick and a lovely break. Let's carry on now. We're going to look now at our very important biomes. Now, what is a biome? Now, learners get very confused what the difference is between a biome and an ecosystem. Now, a biome is a very large ecosystem. So inside our biome, we can get smaller ecosystems. So let's look at these few concepts and hopefully you will understand what a biome is. Right, a biome are very similar to the concept of an ecosystem. Now, inside that biome, we have climate. Now, climate is the most important thing about a biome. Now, what determines the climate of an area is that they determine that according to the rainfall, the amount of rain, and according to the temperature, whether it's cold or hot. All right, geographically defined area means that it's got to do with where the biome is located on Earth. Remember, geography has got to do with Earth, with ground. So where is the biome located? And ecologically similar, which means that there's climatic conditions on the Earth, just like. Now, before we get to that, so what I'm trying to say to you now is that a biome has got its specific climate. It's situated on a specific place on Earth. Now, because of that, we're going to have specific plants that grow there, that adapt to live and grow in that area. We're going to have animals that adapt to that specific biome. We're going to have soil organisms that can live only in that biome. So the biome will determine which animals, which plants grow and live in that area because of its rainfall and its temperature. Right, let's move on to a definition of a biome. So a biome are often identified with particular patterns of ecological succession. Now that's got to do with the different types of plants that grow there, the different levels of plants that grow there. We are going to look at that also in the next session. Right, we're moving on to the different types of biomes. Now the different types are aquatic. Aquatic's got to do with water. Desert, where we know it's very dry. There's only mainly sand. The forest, lots of trees, grassland, and then the tundra. Now you're going to ask, what's that? Now that we don't really find in South Africa. That we find in the Arctic region where there's lots of snow, very cold, very few animals, very few plant life. So we don't have that biome in our country, in South Africa. Now biomes have no distinct boundaries. In other words, one biome will go into another biome, so you'll have like an eco-region in between these two biomes. So there's not a boundary. You can't say, yes, the desert starts, yeah, it ends there, and then the forest starts there and it ends there. So there's a interlinking, like an ecotone between the two biomes. All right, let's move on. We're going to now look at specific terrestrial and aquatic biomes. Now, what does the word terrestrial mean? Okay, now you know what aquatic means. What does that mean? Aquatic comes from the word water. The word terrestrial then is land. Sorry. So we have two distinct biomes. Biomes that are found on land and biomes that are found in water. Now, first of all, let's look at our aquatic biomes. Right, let's move to a green pen. Right, aquatic biomes can be subdivided into basic types. So we get freshwater and marina. Marina, think sea. Right, we all love the sea. So marina, sea. Freshwater, so what is a freshwater region? It's things like ponds and lakes and streams and rivers and wetlands. So those are all biomes that consist of water, fresh water. What are marina regions? Marina regions are mainly oceans. Now oceans are very complicated, complex biomes. Now if we go down to this diagram, I'll go down to the diagram now, but the ocean regions can be separated into 4 major zones. Now those words sound ridiculous to learn: intertidal, pelagic, benthic, and abyssal. But you don't have to know that, all right? You need to know these different regions. Very basic. We have got a low tide zone, much easier word to remember, a middle tide zone, a high tide zone, and a spray zone. Now what's important to you and me is that in each of these zones live specific little animals, specific plants that have adapted to that specific zone. They can only live in that zone, and they adapted to live in that zone. But we are not going to do too much detail on this, on the different zones. So just take note that you know more or less what's going on here. All right, what is important to us now is the terrestrial biome. Terrestrial has got to do with land, like we said now, right? So there's the word land. It's got to do with land. All right. What do we find on this land? We identify the growth form of the dominant vegetation that grow here. So we're going to look at what dominates this biome. What kind of plants do we find in this biome? Are there trees? Are there shrubs? Are there grass forms? So we're going to look at the dominant vegetation. Then the climate, as we said, the climate is determined by the rainfall and by the temperature. And where it's located on the earth. Where is that biome found on earth? All right, the major terrestrial biomes, as I have said already, and this is a repetition of the different biomes. The tundra, as I said, that's the Arctic region where there's lots of snow. The forest biome, the grassland biome, and then the desert. Now we're going to look at each of those biomes in more detail. Now in South Africa, there are 7 biomes. Now let's look at those 7 biomes that we find in South Africa. All right, first of all, there's the grassland. Now I'm going to show you later on a map of this grassland, and then we can discuss more detail. But there you can just see 2 types of animals in that biome. Then we have the savanna. All right, the savanna is bushveld, right? Then we have the succulent karoo. We have the not succulent karoo, right? If you just look at the picture, succulent means juicy plants. So these plants have got the ability to store water, right? Then we move down to the Nama karoo. Now you can see the Nama karoo is also typical like a semi-desert where you have very little vegetation. Now I said there are 7, as you can see here, we only have, if we go back there, we only have 6, mentioned 6 biomes. Now we've had the Nama karoo, and after that we move on to the forest. Remember, we are busy with terrestrial biomes, which are biomes that are on land, and like we said, now there are 7, and the forest is our number 5 that we find. And the forest is where we have lush vegetation, lots of trees and lots of vegetation. Right, then the fynbos. Now look at these beautiful pictures of the fynbos. This is known as our Cape Floral Kingdom, all these beautiful flowers, wildflowers. And then the last one here is the thicket. Now this is a very unknown biome. This is more like the found in KwaZulu-Natal, we're in the valleys, like in the river valleys, and it is not a forest. It's on the verge of being a forest, where we also have lush vegetation. All right, now we're going to move on to the map, and yeah, we're going to talk about the different biomes in a little bit more detail. All right, we're looking now at the grassland biome. Let's start with the grasslands. And now the grasslands, you get 2 different regions of the grasslands. You first of all get the moderate grassland, which is around about here in Gauteng. Then we get the largest biome is the savanna, which is around the Bushveld and the Limpopo area, the Mpumalanga area, and that is the largest biome. Now, yeah, the summers are hot, the summers are wet, and we also get cool winters, and this is where we have the Bushveld. So there's lots of trees and lots of grass, but there's also lots of fire. Now, the fire actually prevents the trees from dominating this area like it is in a forest. Right, let's move on to the Karoo. Now, in the Karoo, we have 2 regions. We have, first of all, the succulent Karoo. Now, this is the succulent Karoo in this area. Sorry, we just go back quickly. That is now the first and the largest grassland or savanna biome. This is our second biome, which is the succulent Karoo, and then just above that we get the second largest biome, which is the Nama Karoo. Now the succulent Karoo, as it says, it contains a lot of succulent plants because these plants need to adjust to this area. They need to absorb water and store it because there's very little rainfall. The Nama Karoo is a semi-desert. We don't really have a desert here in South Africa. That is like a biome completely on its own. As you can see, there's the desert, but that's more part of the Namibia region. So we don't really have a desert in South Africa. So this Nama Karoo is a semi-desert. Right, that brings us to a very important biome, which is the fynbos. Now this area is along our Cape region, and that goes from around about Clan William, which is here in the Western Cape, goes all the way around, and it stretches up to around about Port Elizabeth. Now in this area we found our Cape Floral Kingdom. Now this is an area that attracts a lot of tourists to come and look at all these beautiful wild flowers, especially around about August, after there was a bit of rain, or actually a lot of rain in this region in winter, and then we have this beautiful wild flowers to attract our tourists to come and have a look at these beautiful flowers. All right, that brings us then to our forest. Now, the forest in South Africa is also not as big as forest that we know. So we get this forest in a few patches. So there's near the Knysna area, there's a moderate forest, and there are patches of forest along the Eastern Cape, round up to the KwaZulu-Natal East Coast. There are a few patches of forest. Now, that is where we have more than moderate rainfall. Right, then we have a thicket. That is our next biome. Now, the thicket is not as thick as it is in a forest, but we find that also along this east coast and along the KwaZulu-Natal, and that is mainly found in our river valleys, where we have more rainfall than we have in our other biomes. All right, so those are our biomes. 7 of them, like I said, the desert is not really part of our South Africa biomes. So most important now, the 7 biomes: grassland, which is mainly the savanna, the Nama Karoo, the succulent Karoo, the fynbos area, our forest, and our thicket. Those are the 7 biomes of our South Africa. Thank you. We're going to have a quick break. Please go have a stretch, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Right, grade 10s, welcome back from your ad break, and I hope you had a good one. Let us now do a summary of this little session. Now, I'm going to look at each of these concepts, and I'm going to explain to you once again what each one means. All right, let's start with the biosphere. Now remember, the word bio comes from the word living. So the biosphere now includes all living organisms that live on our planet Earth. Now, these living organisms cannot survive without the abiotic or the non-living part. Now, the abiotic or non-living part consists of the following: the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, and the atmosphere. Now, remember, lithosphere, like I've said to you now, the big letter L for land. So that is how you're going to remember the lithosphere. And what is the lithosphere? That is the crust of our planet Earth, and that is about, we said, about 100 kilometers thick, and that is which forms part of our big planet Earth, the outer crust, the lithosphere. Right, we move on to then the hydrosphere. Remember, H, yes, H2O, which means water. So in this sphere, or in this area, we have got water. So all our organisms live inside water. Now, where on Earth do we find water again? It includes all places on Earth that is covered by water. For example, we get rivers, we get dams, our lakes, and then very important, like we said, is our marina biome, which are our oceans. And that is the salt water, the Marina Regions. All right, then the atmosphere, that is the layer of air that we have around the Earth. So remember, air, A for atmosphere. So that extends round about, I think, around about 1,000 kilometers before you get to space. Now, the geography people might not agree with me there, but that's round about how wide the atmosphere is in which we can find air to breathe. All right, now we're moving on to a word that I haven't mentioned yet, which is the environment. Now we're going to look at this in a bit more detail in our next session. Now that environment is going to include all our biotic. Now what is biotic again? Remember, biotic means living. All our living organisms is known as biotic, and we're going to look at also the abiotic components, abiotic. Right, now remember that little a stands for non, so that means non-living. So in our next section, we are going to look at the environment. Now something that I don't have on this page, just extend the page, is the biomes. Oops, that didn't change the color. All right. Right, now remember the biomes. We said that there are 4 distinct biomes, but in South Africa we have 7 biomes. Try and remember them, all right? But we can let's first of all see. We have the aquatic biomes, which is our ocean, and that's actually our largest biome, because remember, water covers about 70% of our planet. So the aquatic or marina biome is our largest biome. And then we have the terrestrial biome. What is terrestrial again? Terrestrial means land. And there we have got these 7 distinct biomes. Now try and remember them. All right, let's see. Let's do the first one. The first one we did was let's dot them down here. The first one is grasslands. Right, and that was mainly the savanna. Right, grasslands or the savanna, which we find at the top there with Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and coming down the KwaZulu-Natal area. That is the savanna. All right, the next one is, if you can remember now, coming down towards the Cape is the, I'm trying to remember now as well, the karoo. Now the karoo, we have got 2. We've got the succulent karoo, remember? The succulent karoo, that is where we find plants that need to absorb water and store water for long periods because we don't get a lot of rain in that area. Right, then also we have got the Nama karoo. The Nama karoo, which is a semi-arid, semi-desert area where there's very little rainfall, and it's on the verge of becoming a desert. Right, let's look at the very important, let's extend this page a bit, the most important one that I've mentioned today, the area that I love, is the fynbos. Like I said, that is a very favorite area of mine. That's where you find those beautiful wildflowers, and that's known as the Cape Floral Region. All right, then we have the forest, and like we said, in Southern Africa, we just have patches of moderate forests along at Knysna, along our coast of the Eastern Cape and our KwaZulu-Natal coast. All right, and that brings us then to the thicket, which is mainly found in our river, like a river valleys. All right, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the Nama karoo. All right. Now, let's see how much you can remember of this section. We are going to go through a few questions. All right, are you ready? Now, we're starting off with multiple choice questions. Now, so many learners think, oh, multiple choice questions, that is so easy. I'm going to go, I like to choose A, I'm going to just go for A. Now, it's not that easy. Multiple choice questions can be very tricky. So it's very important to read the statement, to read every single one of A, B, C, D. If you know what it is, you choose the letter. If you don't know which one it is, you go by elimination, which means that you're going to eliminate the ones that cannot be true at all. And then by eliminating, you then maybe end up with 2, and then you can make your choice. All right, let's see how that's going to work. All right, so we're going to read the first one. It says, which one? So obviously, they only want one of the answers. You can't put 1, A, and B, because they might only mark the first one, even though the second one is may be right and this first one is wrong, or they just decide they're not going to mark it. So very important, you only have to choose one. Which one of the following statements is correct? Now, by reading each of them, like I said, right, you read the first one, 150 million tons of nitrogen oxide is produced, which sounds very correct to me. All right, but let's read the next one. Carbon monoxide is produced by industry. Now, I think you and I know that that is not really true, because that's carbon dioxide that is produced by industries. Now, remember, industries produce also or use a lot of fossil fuels, and those fossil fuels produce a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. All right, then sulfur dioxide is produced by vehicles exhaust. No, that's also carbon monoxide that's produced by our vehicles. All right, number D, carbon monoxide is the gas produced in the largest amount. I'm not going to agree with that, because I also think it's carbon dioxide that is being produced in large amounts. So if I look at A, B, C, D, I'm going to eliminate D, C, B, and I think the answer is A. All right, let's move on to the next multiple choice. Right, it says now, possible measurements or possible measures for the reduction of air pollution would not include. Now, so many times you read it and you don't see that word not. So you think, okay, possible measures for the reduction of air pollution, and you go and you make your choice. So that little word not is very important. Right, let's look at your choices. A, providing subsidies for solar panels. Now, a solar panel is going to definitely reduce the amount of carbon dioxide produced. All right? So that's not a possibility, because it does, they say not include the reduction. And that one definitely will reduce air pollution. Number B, providing subsidies for truck drivers. Now, how's that going to help us? Or how's that going to help to reduce air pollution? So maybe that one. But you still have to go through C and D. C, rewards for cleaner production by industries. Yes, that is a very good one. There we can reduce the air pollution. Number D, improving the public transport. Oh, definitely. By improving our transport system, we can reduce the amount of gases being released into the atmosphere. So I think it is number B. So can you see, by eliminating and ticking which ones you think is correct, it's eliminating, and then you sit with the one possibility or maybe two possibilities. So guys, it's very, very important to read through all the given possibilities and not just go with the first one and say, oh yeah, the first one is correct. All right, let's move on to the third multiple choice question. Sorry, that way. Right, adding harmful substances to the environment. Adding harmful substances. Now, we are going to look at pollution also in the next session. We haven't really done pollution in this session, but there I've actually given the answer, didn't I? Right, it says adding harmful substances. Now, who's adding the harmful substances? The only people or organisms adding harmful substances is you and me. So the human being, we are responsible for. If I just quickly glance through all these, okay, you would say pollution. Exploitation, forestation, detoxification, those are all good terms. All right, so pollution is our answer, because we are adding that. We are the culprits for pollution. Right. That brings us now to our short questions. The first short question is, what are the parts? So our emphasis is on the word parts. What are the parts of the Earth's system? Now, we've just did a summary of all the parts. So if you think of the whole Earth, what are the different parts? All right, we're going to start with the word or the term biosphere. Now remember, the biosphere is the part of the Earth that includes all the living organisms, all the plants, all the animals, every single little microorganism is a living organism and forms part of the biosphere, which is integrating with the whole system, with the whole earth. All right, the other parts, try and remember, and I'm going to give you, all right, L, A, and H. All right, let's look at at L first. L is land, correct? Lithosphere. So as you write the word down, try and remember how to spell it. Say it to yourself, lithosphere, land. All right, A for air. Well done. Air or atmosphere. The last one is hydrosphere, which is H, and I'm tempted to write H2O, but we're going to write the word hydrosphere. So well done. So that question will count, I'm sure, 4 marks: biosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere. And that forms the whole of the Earth system, as we say. Right, let's move on to the next short question. Okay, we have to move to the next page. All right. How is the Earth system part of a larger system? Now remember, the Earth system works, everything on this Earth works together. All those things we mentioned in the previous question are the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, the atmosphere. All the living organisms interact together. All right, so we're going to say that there's an interconnection. There's an interconnection. That word is important. All right, interconnection between the Earth's system. All right, so we're going to bring that word into the Earth's system, because I want to know how does it form part of the larger system, and that's how it forms part. There's an interconnection of the Earth system together with what? And I say to you now, all the biotic, all right, so it forms an interconnection with the Earth system, and all the biotic, which is the living organisms, just get that S out, organisms. All right, the living organisms, and interacting then with our non-living. Remember, another word for non-living is abiotic. All right, so that is how the Earth system works together and forms part of the largest system, that there's this whole interconnection between the living and the non-living parts of the Earth. Well done. We are doing well so far. Now we need a few definitions. They always ask definitions. There's always mark or questions on definitions. Now, talking about definitions, you need to know, this is known as terminology. Now, that's what life science is about. Life science is about terminology. Without your terminology, without knowing what these words mean, you cannot really answer questions, because that's what the marks are for. The marks are for knowing your terms and for knowing the definitions of your terms. So let's look at the first term, pollution. All right, let's just go on to maybe yellow. All right, let's look at pollution. Now, what is pollution? Now, remember we said pollution is caused by humans. So it's if I have to give a definition, I'm going to say it's an undesirable change. That means that we don't want that. We don't want anything to happen to our environment. So it's an undesirable change in what? In the, or our, I was going to write our because it's our environment. So it's an undesirable change in the environment. And I can say in brackets, our natural resources. Our natural resources. All right? And that is due to what? That is due to human. And we can actually say negative human impact. I can put the word negative in there. Negative human activities. So us humans are the only culprits for polluting our beautiful earth, polluting our water, polluting our land by littering, burning fossil fuels, adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. All right, so we are causing pollution. So that's why we're saying it's an undesirable change of a beautiful environment, and that's causing problems for our animals and our plant communities. Now, what is thermal pollution? Now, thermal, all right, thermal, it's nice to wear a thermal vest, and the thermal vest keeps warm. So think of heat if you think about thermal. Now, what is thermal? It is when hot, remember it's pollution, so it's caused by humans. So when hot waste water. Now, where does hot waste water come from? It comes from, so it's hot waste water from mining and from industries like factories. And that is being pumped or released into rivers, lakes. Now, what is the problem with thermal pollution? Adding this warm, hot water, it's changing the temperature. I'm just going to do that little sign there, which means temperature. Right. It's changing the temperature of the water. It's making the water warmer. So obviously, the organisms that live in that water cannot adapt to warm water. So the animals are going to die, the plants are going to die. So it's affecting the life in the hydrosphere, in the river, in that area. All right, so it's pollution. It's caused by human impact. Right, now a word, contamination. It's a word that you need to know. Now, what is contamination? It's something like it's not fit for human consumption. Sorry, oh, the pen is going mad, yeah. It's not fit for human consumption. Now, you're going to see in our next question, we are going to do a question that contains this word, contamination. All right. Now, two very important words is our flora and fauna. Now, I think some learners mix these two words, they mix the two words up. Now, let's first see what is flora. Think flowers, think florals. So that's got to do with our plant life. So it refers to all plant life. All right, so when you talk about the fauna and the flora of our country, or the flora of Namaqualand, that's where we have all these beautiful wildflowers we were talking about earlier on. All right, then the fauna then obviously refers to all animal life. All right, those are just a few terms, and if I look at it, it could be 2 marks per term, depending on look at your mark allocation. I didn't say that in the beginning. There are no mark allocation for this question, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, I would say this question will count 10 marks. So it's very, very important to look at your mark allocation before you start the question. Read the question, look at the mark allocation, because that will tell you how much information they want. Look at your definition. Mark it for yourself. Think, okay, what are they going to give marks for? Undesirable change in the environment. Yes, I'll get a mark for that. Due to what? Due to human activities. There are your 2 marks. I think also it's very important to go back to your question, to go and see, did I answer the question correctly? Will I get marks for it? Okay, thermal pollution, same thing. You're going to get a mark for saying it's hot waste water. 1 mark. Where does it come from? It comes from mining, industries, maybe even 3 marks, explaining what effect it will have on the plants and the animals. All right, so guys, very important is that you have a look at the mark allocation of each question and give enough information so that you can get your full marks. All right, we are now on question 3, and it's a question that we need to read. Now, learners tend to look at the question, they just look at it, or they they look at the diagram and they go straight onto the questions without reading the information above the diagram. Whenever you get a diagram or a graph or information or any kind of picture, there's always information above that picture or that graph or that table. Read that information, underline the keywords, and make sure you understand what information is given to you before you answer the questions. Now let's see, this is a very good example of what I'm trying to say to you. It says the map below shows a region of the coastline close to where a giant oil tanker, now that word oil, you're going to see, is very important later on, was wrecked at sea. The shallow waters of the coastline provided a rich source of edible crabs. Oil does not kill the crabs, so the crabs don't die from it, all right, but harm their flesh, making them inedible, which means you cannot eat them because they've been contaminated. Right, there's that word contaminated I was talking about earlier on when I said it's not fit for human consumption. So these crabs are inedible, which means that humans cannot eat them. So the crabs don't die, but it's going to affect the humans. Right, and they cannot be sold. So no money because they can't sell their crabs. Right, samples of crabs were collected at sites A to D. The number of crabs is indicated by the size of the circle. I'm just quickly going to move down to this diagram so you can see the size of the circle. Right, so there's a big circle and the smaller circle, and it gets smaller and smaller. Now, while you're reading that, you can actually write onto your diagram, as I'm going to do there, that this is the number of crabs. So, large circle, there's going to be a large number of crabs. Now, you can see I haven't even looked at the questions. So, I'm putting information down on my drawing so that by the time I get to the questions, I already know some of the answers. Wonderful. All right. The extent of the shaded part, that means how big or how small the shaded part is, the extent. At each side represents the proportion of crabs with diseased flesh. That means that it's been contaminated. The flesh of the crabs have been contaminated with the oil. Remember, it doesn't kill the crabs. All right, so if we move down to our diagram, we can also now write it in on our diagram. That shaded region, let's do it there. The shaded region means that it's the proportion that's been covered by the oil, so that's the deceased flesh. All right, that's how many crabs have been contaminated. All right, now let's look at the questions. Now, if you just quickly look at this picture. There's the tanker, there's the oil spill, and it's affecting, as you now will know, the sea life, the marine life, the plants and the animals that live in that ocean, but more specifically, it's got to do with crabs. So you have to stick your answer or keep to the word crabs. You can't now just generalize. So it's about the crabs and about the oil. Right, now the question says, which sample site, A to D, had the highest number? Yo, this is now easy. I can look at my drawing and you feel good about this because you know the answer, because you worked it out yourself, even before you read the question. And you're going to say, site, yes, site A. That's your answer. Now also with questions, it's very, very important to use the correct numbering. So you're going to write down 3.1. When the marker mark your questions or your answers, they look at their memorandum, which means that they look at their answers. So they want your answer to correspond with their answer. It makes it easier for the marker to mark, and you need the marks. All right, so 3.1, site A, and that is 1 mark. Well done. Right, the next question. It says, in which sample, okay, they refer now to A, B, C, D. And as we did now, we wrote down, and we know that that sample has got the biggest proportion. All right, let's read. It says, in which sample site was the crabs rarely found? Now, rarely means least. Okay, we know the big circle meant large amount, and it means smaller, smaller. Easy answer. It is site D. Now remember to write 3.2 and then put site D, and that is the correct answer. 1 mark. All right, we move now to question number 3.3. Same diagram, and we're going to look at the next question. It says now, name the agent. The agent means what was the cause of the pollution. What caused the pollution? And we can see in the diagram, all that oil, you read in the information, it was an oil tanker. So what affected the crabs was oil. So that is the agent. See how easy this question is? Because you analyzed it before you even looked at the question. All right, so the answer was oil, and that is another mark. So far you've got 3 out of 3. Well done. Right, the next question, 3.4. It now says, in which sample site, again, they refer now to A, B, C, or D. Which sample site was the most crabs? Now you're going to, maybe some of you are going to stop reading there. But the rest of the question, you have to finish reading the question up to the last word. I always say to my learners, read every single word and read up to the end of the question. Because there might just be one little word that you have missed out, and that will then give you the answer. You might not get the answer because you haven't read that word. Right, in which sample site was the most crabs, right, affected compared to the pollution population size. Now, if you look at your circles, now remember we wrote in our diagram, we said the shaded side. That shaded side means that that's the amount of crabs that's been affected. Now you're going to look at A and think, all right, A, half of the crabs have been affected. Now if you look at B, I would say B is a better answer because of that big population of crabs, more than 3/4 of the population have been affected. So I hope you agree with me that it is site B. Or they want sample. Okay, sorry, let's write sample B. Let's erase this. I apologize for that. Okay, you're not going to get a mark if you say site B, so we're going to write, because I want the word sample. It's important to use the same words than they actually use in the question. All right, so say which sample site? Sample site B, or just sample B will accept it. So 3.4 sample B, or sample site B. Right, that brings us to question 3.5. Explain your answer. Now remember the question, they want you to explain your answer to that question. Right, they want to know, why did you choose that sample? To say that that sample had the most affected crabs. It's quite obvious. All right, you're going to say B. Y has a greater shaded area. And that's all they want from that answer. And lucky, you're going to get 2 marks for saying that that area had the largest shaded area. So that is your explanation for question number 3.4. Right, 3.6. Question 3.6. It says, list 2. Now, it's not going to help to give 3 or 4, even though in the memorandum or the answers, there are 4 or 5 possibilities. If you're going to give 3 or 4, the marker is going to mark the first 2 only. So let's say you write 3 strategies or 3 answers down. They're going to mark the first 2. Now let's say your first one is right, your second one is incorrect, and your third one is correct. They're not going to mark that third one. So they mark the first 2. So don't waste time and energy by listing 3, because they only ask for 2. All right, so it says list 2 strategies that could reduce the effects of oil pollution at sea. Now, if I just look at my picture, I can actually work out what can they do to reduce the amount of oil spillage. I think they can, let's extend this page, and okay, they can maybe, let's say first point. Now I'm making dots here, and I think that's also important. If you make little bullets, okay, we need 2 points. The bullets is just easy for the marker to mark. If you're going to write a paragraph, now the marker has to go and try and find your answers. So make 2 bullets, it's 2 answers, separate lines, easy to mark. All right, now look at your picture. Now I would say the oil comes out the tanker. So what should they do? They should inspect that tanker. So they should have regular service of oil tankers. So they must make sure that the oil tankers are serviced before they go out on sea, so that there are no possible cracks in the bottom of the boat where the oil can leak. So that's a good point. Right, the second point is maybe they should monitor. They should monitor I would say the travel routes of these tankers, of the oil tankers, more efficiently, so that they know where are they going to, how many tankers are out on sea. So they should follow up a bit more, they should follow it up better, so that they know what's going on sea with their oil tankers, I would say. All right, now I'm going to give you other possibilities. Remember we said 1, 2. But there are other possibilities. Another possibility is that there must be legislation, which means laws. Laws on what? On the oil tankers. In other words, on the movement of the oil tankers, on the, let's say legislation on the oil tankers. For example, on the amount. All right, how many oil tankers? There should be laws about the oil tankers. All right, so legislation, I think that's important. They must put laws down for these oil tankers so that they know what they can do, what they can't do. Another point is that maybe think about what happens if there is oil. Maybe they can clean up the oil spills by using, let's say, bacteria, which is a biological way of controlling or getting rid of the oil. So using bacteria to dissolve the oil spill. All right. If you can think of any other possibility or any other strategy, you can write it down. If you think it's a good strategy, they will add it to the memorandum. But these are the possibilities that you can use in your answer. All right, we're now going to move on to essays. Now an essay, you're going to say, oh no, I don't want to write an essay. Now luckily in life science, the essays are not as long as it used to be. When I was at school, we used to write essays for 75 marks. Then it came down to 50 marks. I remember when I was a matric many moons ago, the essay was 50 marks. Oh gosh, we had to have a long introduction and a long body and a long conclusion. These days, essays are simpler. but you still need to do a planning of the essay. So I'm going to help you how to plan an essay, how to write an essay. All right. Now let's look at this essay topic. Maybe you're going to get this essay in your exam end of the year. You'll be so lucky that you can have this topic and that I can help you with it. All right. It says, write an essay on the fynbos biome and discuss the following aspects. Now, if you look at it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different aspects. Now, what's important, I'm going to give you a few tips of how to write an essay. Now, the first tip is that you must answer the question. Now, with this essay, they've given you subheadings, and that makes it so much easier to write an essay. So often, they give you a long essay topic without any subheadings, and that makes it a bit more difficult. So you have to read the essay over and over to make sure that you know what do they actually want. Yeah, they give you the subheadings, so it makes it a little bit easier. All right, I'm going to read to you, we're going to go through all the points, and then I'm going to help you to construct this essay. All right, it says, what is the meaning? So they first of all want the meaning of the term. So they want you to say, what does the word mean? Right, identify features of families or species that make up this vegetation type. Describe the ecological role in the environment. I'm just underlining all the key concepts or keywords of each point. The biological impacts on the environment of destroying this type of vegetation, all right? What impact will it have? And then the last thing that you have to discuss is the economical importance of it for the people of this area, the Western Cape. All right, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to help you. Oh, sorry, there's a last one, is very important, very, very important, is the management strategies involved in protecting this beautiful fynbos area. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to help you now, first of all, to plan this essay. All right, what do we do? Let's extend our page. Right, first of all, we need an introduction. That's the first thing we need, is an introduction. Now, with your introduction, it's a short paragraph explaining what you are going to talk about in the essay. Now, it doesn't help to make too much detail because you're going to just repeat yourself in the essay. So in your introduction, you're just going to mention maybe one or two, well, not one or two, you're actually going to mention, if I move back, you're going to mention, in my essay, I'm going to discuss the features, the ecological role, biological. So you're going to basically summarize these points into one paragraph. No detail. Like I said, you're going to repeat yourself. All right. So you need a short introduction, very short. Now get to the body of the essay. Now here is where we're going to need to do a planning. Now I know in English you have to do quite a concise, big planning of your essay, and you have to hand it in. It will be marked and all that. Yeah, it won't be marked. So this is for yourself. So you do this in rough. But it's very important. Now, I like to use a little mind map. That to me is the easiest way to do planning. Now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, I don't like mind maps. I'm telling you now, it's wonderful. All right, so in my mind map, it's about fynbos. Remember, like I said in the beginning, read your question, answer the question. This is not about biomes in general. This is about a specific biome, the fynbos. Right, now what do they want of fynbos? Okay, all right, let's start with, you have your introduction. I'm not going to put down introduction here. All right, now if you go back to the essay, I'll keep on have to go back. All right, they want the meaning of the term fynbos. Okay, so what I'll have to say here is, what is the meaning? So let's just put meaning of the term. All right, you're going to start your essay after your introduction by just writing a sentence down, or maybe 2 sentences. What do you understand by the term of fynbos? All right, I'll come back to more we'll add more flesh to this mind map. We'll just do the outline first. Right, the second thing they want, if you go back now to the topic, the second thing they want you to identify the features. Now features has got to do with the structure of the plant. Features, all right, of the families. I don't think they want you to write down names of plants. They just want you to explain the feature of these species that make up the vegetation part. All right? Okay, then they want, we write down features. Features of the vegetation. Vegetation. Right, the next point. So we keep on going back. It's important, I think, to go back to your question each time. So when you do your planning, so your planning will actually help you to answer the correct question. So it's important to keep on going back. Right, biological impact on the environment of destroying. So what will happen if they destroy this vegetation? What will happen? What impact will it have on the biological part, which means our living plants, our living animals? So the next point you have to discuss is the biological impact. Right, so there's already 3 of our points that we need to discuss in this essay. The next point is the ecological role. What role do these plants play in the environment? Okay, so back to our planning. They want us to write down the ecological role. Now, like I was saying, you are lucky with this essay that they give you the subheadings. But I still think that doing it like this in a mind map, you can add a little bit of information now. You will make sure that with this planning that you are going to get full marks for your essay. All right. The next point is, have I done? Okay, the economical importance. So it means what will it have, what impact will it have on the people and the economic part of their lives, okay? All right, so we need to do the, I've done that, the economical impact that it will have on the people living in that biome. Right, then management strategies. That is our last point that we need to discuss. We have to go that way, is our management strategies. All right. Now, I'm not sure how much this essay is going to count. I don't have a mark allocation, but let's say this essay is going to count 30 marks or 40 marks. You have to make sure, because that's always the question, how much information must I write down? So often learners will say, oh, you know what, my essay was 4 pages long. And then somebody else will say, but mine was only 1.5 pages long. Then once it's been marked, you that wrote 4 pages got 10 out of 30, and the person who wrote 1.5 pages maybe got 29 out of 30. So an essay is not about how much you write, but it's more about the quantity. It's about what you write. That's what's important. So doing your planning will help you to write down just enough information and not too much. Right, let's go into a little bit. I'm not going to do too much detail of each of these. I'm helping you here how to plan an essay. So the essay can be on any of the biomes. They can ask you to write an essay on, let's say, the savanna biome, or if the essay is about biomes. So I'm more helping you how to plan an essay. All right, any kind of essay. Right, let's now look at maybe what does the fynbos term means. Now, if you look at the word fyn means fine. So it's got to do with very fine leaves, thin leaves. It's short, or we can say dwarf little bushes that grow there. And these bushes have got fine leaves. All right, obviously you'll have to write down a little sentence. We're busy with the plan, so we're jotting down a few words. All right, so that's what the term really means. Okay, right. Features about the vegetation. Now, that coincide with the term, because the features, there's not too much, I'm not going to do too much detail, but the features are things like the leaves are thin, the leaves have got tiny hairs on them, the leaves don't have thick cuticles because they're not succulent plants. So any kind of feature that is that's got to do with the fynbos, with those kind of plants, that's what they want you to write down with features. All right, we're getting to the biological impact. Now, when we look at biological impact, this has got to do with destroying the habitat, destroying where these plants grow. Now, you know that. Okay, let's write destroy habitat. What impact will that have? Biological impact. So they want to know what impact will that have on the living plants and animals. So you destroy the habitat, the place where animals live, the place where tiny microorganisms live. Their place, their habitat where they live are destroyed. What effect will it have on them? Another thing is that the biological impact will be soil erosion. So if these plants have to be destroyed, now remember, going back to our question, they want biological impact on the environment if the plants are destroyed. What impact will it have on the whole environment? So soil erosion is one of the other, or one aspect that you need to look at. And another biological impact will be, if they remove all these plants now, what impact will it have on our environment is that it will change the composition of the atmosphere. Now remember, we were discussing the atmosphere, we were discussing the gases in the atmosphere. So if they remove the plants, it's going to change our carbon dioxide levels, our oxygen levels. We're going to look at this carbon cycle, oxygen cycle in our next session. All right. Then we have the ecological role. There you're going to discuss just what effect will it have on, for example, our food chains. Now remember, the plants serve as a food source for herbivores, so it will affect the food chain. Right, economical role is what effect will it have on money, on the income of the people in the Western Cape if these plants are being removed. Right, then very, very important are management strategies. Now, there's strategies that you can discuss specifically for that area, but you have to think about things like conservation. What strategies will they have to put in place to conserve the area, look after the area, because the fynbos is one of our most cherished places on Earth, I would say on planet Earth. So that's a very important point that you need to discuss as a management strategy. All right, now to conclude, that's now your plan, all right? That is the body of the essay, so you're going to discuss each of these points in your essay. Now, the last point that you need to do is after your introduction, all right? You've discussed all these points now, all those points have been discussed. You made sure in your planning that you've answered each of these questions, each of these points. All right, so now after your body, you need a very short conclusion. All right, always just a short conclusion of, it can be even your own opinion, but anything that is related to the fynbos as a little conclusion paragraph. Now remember, it's marked. The essay will be marked according to, they won't give you marks for what you wrote in your conclusion, but they will mark the whole essay. How did you put your essay? How did you structure your essay? Was there a conclusion? Was there an introduction? Did you use paragraphs? All right. Now, good luck. I'm saying good luck for your essay writing. Good luck for all the other questions, and I really hope that I have I've assisted you in how to answer multiple choice questions, how to answer short questions, and how to answer essay. Make sure that you read every single word. Good luck, grade 10s. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you. Bye-bye.